I would like to invite to come to the stage two our colleagues, former colleagues from ECEN, who played an important role in this 25 years of history in different stages of ECEN development. So I invite to come here Rüdiger Noll. Rüdiger, come. Rüdiger if I may call him so, he belongs to founding fathers of ECEN. Rüdiger played an important role in the second European Ecumenical Assembly, and also in the previous one in Basel, but in particular in Graz in '97. And as we have heard, ECEN was founded on the recommendation of this Ecumenical Assembly, and Rüdiger was very instrumental in this initiating process at that time. Afterwards, ECEN has been founded after the assembly in 1998, and Rüdiger was again playing the instrumental role in the process and served as a first secretary of ECEN. Rüdiger, I'm very much pleased that you are here and you found a way to host your day into this assembly. Welcome. I invite to come here Martin Voss. Martin played an important role, not in the first part of ECEN existence, right after 1998, but played an important role in the next stage of ECEN history. And Martin served for several years as a moderator of ECEN enabling. There were years of when ECEN was called not only a small child. ECEN grew up a little bit, and Martin played an important role in keeping different streams together and leading ECEN over sometimes a difficult period, facing some challenges. And I'm very pleased you are here, and we can recall together some thoughts from the ECEN history. Thank you. In the first part of this discussion, I would like to invite first Rüdiger. Would you share with us some of your thoughts? How do you remember ECEN and in that early part, early stages of history? What remained in your mind since then?
First of all, let me say that I'm proud to be here again. And 25 years, that's something to look back to. And I'm very proud to see and happy to see some very familiar faces also from these early days. And some new faces. And that's a good sign. It's a good sign of continuity, but at the same time of renewal and new spirit. I think it's a good moment to celebrate. Thank you for inviting me. As you said, I regard myself as one of the founding, so of the mothers of the founding fathers and founding mothers of the ECEN network. And thank you, Peter, also for this film, because there were many people visible in this film and in these slides which paved the way for the network. I want to repeat those we have seen. We have seen Lucas Fischer, I have to mention him, because it was due to his stubbornness that we overcome a lot of initial steps. But I also want to mention his wife. Barbara was actually who gave the name, the European Christian Environmental Network. And it also has to do with, well, I learned from Lucas. I worked in the Faith and Order Commission of the World Council of Churches just after Lucas was the director there. And I learned a lot of my theology from him. And it was his theology which also paved the way for us as a network. I would say it all started with the conciliar process for justice, peace, and integrity of creation. And so far, your hint at the Basel Assembly in '89 is probably important. This is where the environmental issues kind of hit the European agenda. That was in '89, and then in '92, there was this famous United Nations Conference on Environment and Development in Rio de Janeiro. And we were present there with a group of 192 delegates from churches. 192. We spent about 3 weeks in Rio in preparations, in being part of the NGO community, had our own meetings. I was then, for example, delegated into this group which drafted an alternative Earth Charter in Rio. On that, we then had a big consultation for Europeans in Crete. We were about 120. And then came the second European Ecumenical Assembly in Graz. And I want to share one story with you. I hope it's not old men talking about the war. In Graz, there was a very critical moment. I was the organizer, and we had the second half, 4 drafting teams working. And one night, a close friend to many of us, Werner Zinfendorfer, does that name ring a bell to you? Werner is really one of the ecumeniacs par excellence. And some of us, I would call him my ecumenical grandfather. There were others in the room who called him his ecumenical father. He died with his wife in a car accident on the 4th day of the assembly. And then I was thinking, what do I do now? All my friends were in these drafting teams who knew Werner. So do I wait until tomorrow morning and I tell them at breakfast? I thought they would kill me. So at that stage, I called all the friends of Werner out of these drafting teams, and we were standing in this huge fair hall. And we were about 10, 12 of us. We had a prayer for Werner and his wife and his families and his friends. 12 people standing in a huge thing where 5,000 people would be seated. And at the end, people said, coming from these drafting teams of the assembly, and said, in each of these drafting teams, we go back behind what we have already said in Basel. And at that moment, there were 6 sub-themes in the Graz assembly. We decided in this small circle, okay, then we have to change gear. We don't have to make ethical statements or political statements. Under each of these headings, we have to create dynamics so that nobody could resist anymore, a process which nobody can hold in his hands. And that was prepared, of course, when the recommendation of ECEN got into the documents. We wanted to create something like a church's civil society, because it needs the people of God, the priesthood of all believers, of all baptized. We needed us, as we are sitting in this room, to create the dynamics within the churches. At Grant, already churches were ready to step back behind what we had decided. So Lucas was in all of this very important, but then the membership, it was a lot of bunch of committed people. I see Mareike, I see Antonella, and I miss hundreds of names already in this room. But I wanted also to say there were people like Isolde Schönstein from the Roman Catholic Diocese in Vienna. She was the one who started this environment liturgy, time for creation liturgy. And she was very taking care and involving people. It was this type of individuals who made a difference. Hans Hermann Böhm was seen in the picture. He was the one leading the coalition on environmental auditing. And it is not these people who had a job to do this. Hans Hermann was ecological guy of a diocese in Germany. But he did it out of commitment. It needed these committed people to make a difference and to lead the coalitions, as we call them. The themes of the coalitions are very much the same you have shown in the film in the end. So there's continuity. But what we wanted to say by the way of coalitions is we don't meet just once a year and we talk about issues like that, but we work in between the assemblies. And these people stood for that. It were Roman Catholics, it were Protestants, in the majority I have to say, but also Orthodox people. Dimitri Organomoulos, I don't know, do you remember that name? Dimitri was instrumental for parties. Andrei Danilov, you have seen it from Belarus. Roman Uriga, the assembly, first assembly took place in his place. An issue which we had to look at, and I mentioned it, Peter, whether you like it or not, was always what is our relationship to CAC at that stage. And we decided not just to become a part of CAC. I was a secretary of CAC, like you are now. But we said we want this civil society punch within the church as well. Therefore, we didn't make it just a part of CAC, but we made it kind of stimulus to CAC as well. Secondly, we waited for the Roman Catholic Church to join the network. That would not have been possible if you would have just been part of CAC. We waited perhaps too long. I don't know how it is today. It were Roman Catholic people involved in this, but not the church itself. One of the other dioceses there, the Scouts movement of Belgium was part of ECEN, but it was never the church who took a strong commitment. And last but not least, yeah, we wanted to provide a challenge not only to society but to the churches. And our division of labor, we had a very clear division of labor. The environmental network will bring the content, and CAC would put it into policy shaping so that one could be advocacy in Europe and vis-a-vis the institution. That was a clear commitment which was there from the start and which we value. I stop here for a moment.
Thank you. Thank you. Martin, would you share with us your thoughts? How you do you remember your time in ECEN?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Greetings, friends, and it's good to be back at the ECEN Assembly, which I realise I've not been at for 7 years. That's a long time, but anyway, I still recognise faces. Maybe some people recognise me. I think I've attended all of the assemblies from 2, and they've held a lot of personal memories for me. Some of them came up through the slides just now. So, for example, the second assembly, third assembly in Rawice in Belarus, we had an excursion into the city of Minsk, which was very heavily destroyed during and we witnessed the recent unveiling of a sculpture, which was pictured up on the screen before, of the victims of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, which was put together by the mothers of Afghani soldiers who died and Soviet soldiers who died. very poignant moment for me personally, and even more so, I might think where we are today. And another poignant moment for me was when we were in Elspeth in the Netherlands. This in some ways kind of symbolises ECEN. We were invited to bring something, and during the opening service we poured very sincerely and very kind of meaningfully the water into a large container receptacle. And as we did so, each of us shared something of the story that was behind that water. And we heard narratives of people's flooding, we heard narratives of pollution and contamination, we heard stories of thirst, we heard stories of the loss of wildlife throughout the ceremony, through the assembly. And somehow we had that moment of sharing. Which brings me just the next point I would just like to share, which is that for me, ECEN has always been a place of cooperation and togetherness. So we are now here from different countries, different backgrounds, different traditions, different confessions, and different materials. It's a tapestry of different colours and different tones. It's a tapestry of multiple threads and strands, and some of those threads go very purposefully to other organisations and networks. And some of those threads just hang loose, maybe to be picked up in the future, or maybe not. It's a tapestry that is multi-layered and multi-levelled, and together it makes up a kaleidoscope of projects and people and prayer and politics and partnerships that make up the life of ECEN. And then I asked myself, well, what is the picture? What is the image that is depicted on this tapestry? And it is, for me, a community of European Christians interacting with one another, with others outside of the network, with creation, and with God. And everyone in that picture is engaged with what the rabbis call the tikkun olam, the healing of the brokenness of the earth and the prevention of brokenness. We are there together in that tapestry, holding on and developing a life of love and justice. And so I guess for us now, as we move forward, the question is, what do we want to do with this tapestry in the future? Do we just leave it on the wall to be admired? Or do we want to add to it in some kind of way? And if we want to add to it, how do we do that?
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, this is, in the first part of our conversation, we want to go into this. And if you look at this panel, you may ask the question, is it correct only to look at the history? Certainly not. And this is not a wished composition of this panel. Something is missing here. The original idea was to have a conversation between those who remember something from history. Unfortunately, our colleague from Ecumenical Youth Council was preparing herself to be part of this panel and coming with her perspective to this discussion. Unfortunately, to find replacement in a shortage of time. So please bear with us that we are here in this composition, three old men. We are aware that something is missing, but hopefully we'll be able to fill the gaps also in the course of this assembly. In history, we have heard some nice stories and that stays in your mind from your days. But now we know that some questions from side of you would come. And one of the questions might be, what would you think should we take from ECEN history? What remains and what we should keep in mind and to make it alive again and again and to keep it alive also in days to come?
Can I say something? Yeah, sure. So I think for me, there's a need to kind of look at where we've had our strongest impacts. And one example of that would be, for me, the Ora di Silenzio, when we were outside Milan Cathedral with our placards for the 60 of us for a whole hour of complete silence. And why does that stay with me? Because I think that was when we were exposed to the more outside world. We were there in a public place, okay? We were making a statement on behalf of ourselves. It's when we are giving flavour or taste or change to things that are outside of us. That's where we make the bigger impacts, whether it's at COPs or whether it's at KEC assemblies or whether it's in the European Commission or whether it's in the European Parliament. So I think in the future, more being
the important thing, actually, Peter, I learned from you. Not only one. It is that change to the better, towards a sustainable future, cannot just work through technological development, cannot just work through politics, but it has to change through changing awareness of we need to change our lifestyle. If we continue as Europeans to live as we do and increase our consumption as a whole, but to also throw a little bit water into the wine. If I look at it, I would want ECEN to develop into a direction where it has a kind of unique selling point. So that ECEN becomes known on, oh, we think about this one, ECEN. So I always thought that this time of creation was such sort of selling point. This morning I got a Twitter message, an ECEN message, which said CTBI promotes the time of creation, 1st of September to 4th of October. No mention of ECEN whatsoever. They have done their own liturgy, they have done their own thing. But on the one hand, you can say it was ECEN who made it happen, who got it so much in the churches that they identify with it as their own product. Well done. But I would also want to look continuously of where is ECEN, so to speak, the nail in the wall.
This is a big topic. I spent many times thinking hours. We have seen of the 25 years in ECEN many people coming and going, and sometimes I was kind of sad. These people were coming, and then a couple of years they are departing. Would be known a little bit more. Yeah, but we live in a world like that, and perhaps this is task for a little bit all of us to make ECEN a little bit more known, not only the product of ECEN. And you're absolutely right. There are many things, there are products of ECEN. We know that we are fully aware that time 25 years ago was very different than we are living now. And ECEN has changed over the years, more now than it was 25 years ago. How, in your perspective, in your thought, how ECEN has changed? What was changing ECEN comparing your days in ECEN and today?
You are thinking?
I'm thinking.
I'm speaking before thinking.
You go on.
I think ECEN has become more professionalized. The themes are clearly covered. We did some people who were never in touch became advocates in their churches. They learned to it. It was a learning experience first and foremost. Grassroots sort of dialogue. And I think now, and as far as I observe ECEN, it is more the political agenda. It is the urgency which we have discovered. Either we change now or it's too late. So we miss a tipping point. So we are also driven by this urgency to become more professional and to look where we make the impact. That doesn't mean that the mutual learning is gone, but I think the political agenda has got more visibility than this learning experience.
In this kind of conversation that used to.
I think I would say that there is a paradox in some of this, because on the one hand, certainly in some countries, not most, the influence and position of the churches has changed enormously vis-a-vis society for various reasons. And one of the consequences of that, particularly for the country I come from, is that we cannot any longer tackle these kinds of big issues as specific denominations or as specific faith groups. So that's why the multi-faith, the interfaith aspect of working together to do this healing that I was talking about earlier is so important, and why we've moved from being just having Christians to multi-faith groups. That's been one big change, with big others. But there's also the declining influence in the church. But the other side of the paradox is that the world, as a society, has become much more engaged and aware of what's happening to the ecological processes that are affecting the planet. Much more environmentally aware. So we've got a world which can use the language of climate catastrophe and breakdown of life. But we need to find particular ways in which we articulate that, and sometimes we need to move into new areas of of which one would be.
This is an important component. Environmental concerns becomes ecumenical agenda, and this is one of that parts of an ecumenical field where churches from different ecclesial backgrounds find very little or almost no obstacles for working together. There are no differences between churches of different traditions to work together on environment. So it is important in this respect as well. Care for environment as an ecumenical agenda. But as you rightly mentioned, Martin, it goes beyond ecumenical agenda. It is an interfaith agenda. It is more and more present with us, at least in some countries, for the start. And we see it in big international meetings, not only church meetings, but like meetings like COP, where certainly churches are present, but not only Christian traditions. There are other faith traditions increasingly present, which can bring good and particularly valuable witness of interfaith cooperation. Really.
If I may, at this stage, I would go even a step further. This is not a religious matter. It is a societal matter. We have to team up with civil society on this issue. For many years after Basel 89, we said all of a sudden the churches have made their homework. We are at the forefront. We are the spearhead. And we discovered we were in a catch-up moment where we caught up with what was happening in society. So I would say we need to not only team up and form a unity in as much as we can, or unity and diversity among religions, but we need to see who are our partners in society. And that I find sometimes lacking on the side of the church. If they still believe, oh, we give the big word. No, we are not giving the big word. In Germany, if I'm sorry to allow for the German context, not recently, but less than 2 years ago, we had a statement on the planet on which we live as a Protestant church in Germany. And in this text, the role of the churches, and I use the 3 words in German because they all begin with an M. As churches, we should be Mittler, Mahner, and Motor. So, Mittler means bringing the different stakeholders together. That means this is what we try as academies. We need government people, civil society people, and church people together for a mutual learning process. And we as academies try to establish what we call a culture of discourse, in which it's not kind of hierarchy, but where people put meet on an equal footing. The best argument counts. Mittler means this sort of activity. Manas, yes, there is a moment where we hope some churches to speak a prophetic voice. That was the key words throughout my ecumenical career. And I'm still skeptical what that means. I can recall moments where there was a prophetical voice. And Hammond's for ecumenical auditing, we have to be a witness that less can be more. That doing our homework could serve as an example for our neighborhood. So I'm part of developing environmental cooperatives, for example, on solar energy, together with Joost Kraus, whom we saw. We have transported that model to Greece. It's flourishing, it makes a difference. So when you ask about these three roads and where we go, I have some sympathy for these three roads.
And behind that kind of opening up of recognizing it's our own common humanity, our own common planet, there are narratives, and those narratives that we can begin to share with other people mean that we might have to re-examine our own theology. We might need to deepen our own theology, dare I say. So beyond the kinds of concepts and religious language that we use, there are deeper values, and sometimes it's by sharing and working through some of those deeper values that we find that there are allies and friends and partners in all sorts of places that we would never expect. And the same works for them. So there is a kind of theological value-shaped face to this, as well as being the pragmatic and the prophetic.
I think it is generally shared. This last point has been mentioned in terms of cooperation, ecumenical cooperation, interfaith cooperation, civil society, organizations. But still, in this kind of discourse, there is something specific on churches' contributions, Christian contributions to this debate, and especially when some of these big organizations. Why create their own? And it can be a long debate. What is a specific and genuine contributions of churches in so this would be, of course, a long topic. I just want to a little bit narrow down this topic, which I think is a strong and valuable topic to talk about, not only in the question. In my view, one of the elements, not the one, but one of the elements is the emphasis on personal relationships. Yeah, we have heard, we have seen on this on the face when we were of ECEN. We remember our friends and their contributions. This interpersonal relationship of networking among Christians, among the churches. How would you see it from your perspective?
I mean, one of the key words in all of this is the importance of building trust. We live in a world which is so fragmented and divided that we're very suspicious of something which is different. So fundamentally, we need to rebuild trusting relationships with one another so we can actually move forward together. And I think that works for me, for example, at a local level. So it's by me sharing a meal with the local in the interfaith context. For example, sharing a meal with local imams, or it's going to visit people at the synagogue to look at the structure and their environmental footprint, or it's going to the Sikh temple to look at their travel arrangements, or it's to work with the Hindu community about a new building and how that building could be more environmentally friendly. It's those sorts of things, but you only do it by building relationships, you build friendships. And that comes back to a strength for ECEN, as you said at the very beginning, Peter. ECEN is a place for friendship. And we're here with friends working
in important, not in what. This is a value and our concern and we need to work with it.
I completely fully underline what you said. But in me, there's still this moment of, is that enough? To build circles of friendship. We need to go beyond the circles of friendship. So, if somebody asks me, why do you as churches do your own thing? I would not dismiss that question. I joined the political party after many, many years. I've learned in my social media work, you cannot expect to do your own sort of working group and that everyone listens to you. You need to go where the others are. We as churches need to go where the others are. I'm a member of a football club. I go there every second to play. 88, no, to watch. 81,000. But everyone in my corner where I'm sitting every 2 weeks knows that I'm a pastor. At halftime, I have all their family stories. So be there where the people are and where their concerns are. If we do our own sort of thing, it should be first and foremost a critical self-reflection of ourselves and our theology. And there I come back to the late Lucas Fischer. Because Lucas was, in as much as I am a reformed theologian, and Lucas always came in terms of the environment with this theological notion of obedience to God. We have to be obedient to God. And that creates sort of a huge stone which will always put on your head. And I think we also need to reflect in our theology, what does solidarity mean? What does friendship mean? What means, I just come back from Greece, what does philoxenia, hospitality mean? And what does it mean when the Bible says God created and it was good? So,
Yeah, and you are touching an important point. That, one of the important points of difference compared to civil society organizations is our theology. And we need to be strong in theology. We are taking care of creation, we work on the environment, we do it with a strong theological awareness. So our theology is a necessary part of this process.
When you say, and God saw that it was good, we need to remember that the word good in English and indeed in other languages actually comes from the same root as the word for God. So when we say God saw that it was good, it's actually what should be said is God saw that it was godly, it was holy. So the whole sanctity of the earth is a kind of big thing. We don't get it.
In the last part of our conversation, before we open to questions from audience, and we want to have a conversation with you as well, there is a last bit that I would like to ask you. We mentioned that we miss voice of youth, not in the hall, but on the stage. So I tried to formulate the questions which I would have expected from a young person in this panel. What churches need to do in order their work on environment and climate change to be more visible, more recognized? How churches should respond to the challenges of environment we face?
I'm not sure that I have to say more than what I did say already. In the sense, I want churches who go out, who give an example, who are there where the people are. And we have so many, if you look on sociological literature right now, you find out there's Colin Crouch in Britain and others who say, as long as people do not have enough to eat, they cannot care for the environment, or they do not care for the environment. So how does the social component come together with the environmental component? Is a challenge that's instituted. And in Tallinn, there was Hartmut Roster, who gave a very clear task for the churches. I'm not sure this is all what is there to say, but Hartmut Roster said, capitalism develops its own dynamics, and the churches are one of the few institutions who can stop a minute. Let's think about it. To kind of de-escalate, so to speak, the self-fulfilling prophecy of capitalism. He has just written a small book of why does democracy need the churches, and comes to the same conclusion. So I think our task is also to look at the underlying issues and to see what offer we have to make. But the offer we have to make as an offer, not as a moral sort of hammer, and as part of a discourse and a dialogue, not as part of we know it.
I think in my experience in the UK, where a church is growing, and I don't mean necessarily numerically, it's because it has an ethos, it has a culture of being sensitive to the lives of its members. What we're beginning, I think, to discover is that all of us are being touched by the kind of environmental and climate catastrophes that are facing the world at the moment, in one way or another. And this is surely an opportunity to begin to kind of share that kind of experience, which many of us are now beginning to find real for ourselves, and to link it in with some kind of understanding about where we are as people of faith.
Perhaps the last question is your positive developments. As we have, like it's been mentioned, over the years. Many more churches than it was 25 years ago is now engaged in this work. Therefore, this still place for ECEN to contribute to this work.
I can now say the sentence everyone is expecting now. If ECEN wouldn't be existing, it would need to be invented right now. Now, you spoke about narratives. Success stories need to be told. Not so to speak always a negative and we have to reply for, but these sort of this sort of success story. That is one place generally ECEN holds. The other thing is, you say, yes, our churches are moving. Most of our churches are moving. But are they moving appropriately to the challenge? The challenge is growing at the same time 1.5 degree, 2.5 degree, 2 degree. And we are missing that. So there needs to be still this injection also into our churches. So that time is not gone.
Certainly no, that there is still work for churches to be done. And the question was, yeah, churches grown up a little bit, grew up a little bit, assembled some experience. Yeah, is there a role for ECEN in this program? Yeah, we understand what you're trying to say.
I mean, I think, yes, there is a role for ECEN, because it's an energetic place for cooperation, for sharing, for togetherness, and it is already, as we've seen, it is already energized so many people in so many organizations. And I started off by saying something small, but it's significant, which means that it's actually pointing at something, which means that it's actually pointing a different kind of way. And I think stories of hope, stories of purpose, and always maintaining, I go back to the rabbinical tradition again by saying that we do everything in critical appreciation of moving forward in all sorts of new ways, as well as continuing some of the
We are in Denmark. You correct me, please. I seem to remember a story in Kierkegaard's diary, where it says there's the preacher preaching to geese, and he's telling them that they all can fly. At the end of the worship, they all kind of go out of the church. So I believe the time where there's a preacher who tells you what is right and what's supposed to happen are gone. There is no change in this decade of change, of transition processes, where we not know where it goes on so many issues. There is no change without a civil society and a civil society within the church. And therefore it needs ECEN.
Thank you. Thank you for this this far, your questions, and we would like now to hear questions from audience and how to keep conversation on here.